What's up, everyone? Welcome to another High Value Agent podcast episode where we inspire people to create a better life through real estate. And this one's going to be fun because I am going to share with you how you can increase referrals in your repeat business. Okay. Well, this is going to be jam-packed. It's going to be very short and sweet. All right. So we're going to hop right into it. Again, how can we create an experience that the client cannot imagine being any better? How can we create that experience? And as you're listening to this, if you're not driving, if you're at home, I want you to write down, how can I, as a real estate agent, increase the experience for the client? Okay. And if you want to do more business in less time and less energy, one of the best ways to do so is to increase your referrals and repeat business, right? Being able to turn a stranger into a client and then a client into an advocate. That is how you can, over 5, 10, 15, 20 years of you being in the business, be able to help more families make more money. And it feels like you're doing less input. Okay. So let's get right into it. We're going to first start with every conversation that you have with the client. You need to have intention. You need to have intention. Your main focus when you are communicating with your client needs to be focused on 4 things: education, reminding them of what you've discussed previously. Number 3, future pacing them, or AKA, some people call it future pacing. If you're familiar with NLP, neuro linguistic programming, you've heard of future pacing before. In other words, it just means setting the expectations. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4, asking for feedback. Asking for feedback. Okay. And I'm going to unpack these. Let's talk about the first one. Again, 4 main focuses when you are having conversations with intention with the client. Again, educate. So our job as professionals is to educate the client. Period. The more informed and educated the client is, the better decisions they make, the better overall experience that they have, right? I want you to think about that for a second. You need to make sure that they are educated. Are you educated? Some of us as real estate agents, we're not doing the work required to make sure we are educated, to make sure we are very informed as to what is happening in a transaction, or how a transaction works, or what is happening in the market. But we got to figure that out, because we need to make sure we are transferring knowledge from you to clients. That's number 1. Number 2, you got to remember that when you're talking to a client, they retain maybe 7% of what you tell them. Okay. Especially if you're getting into talking numbers and finances. I mean, that's tough for someone to really retain all that information you're throwing at them. So you got to constantly remind them of the information that you previously told them, right? Remind them on the previous educational conversations you've had in the past, right? Very, very important to understand they're not retaining as much as you actually think, okay? I want you to write this down. You have to say one thing 7 times for them to actually internalize it for the first time. Let's say that again. You got to say one thing at least 7 times before the person who you're talking to is able to retain it or internalize it for the first time. So if you say something 6 times, they heard it 0 times. If you say something 7 times, they heard it 1 time. If you say something 14 times, they've heard it twice. Okay. And this is real. This is real. Okay. If you want to increase your referrals and repeat business, it's these small things that you got to understand and apply immediately. Because I want you guys to kill it. I want you guys to increase your business every year. I want you guys to retain more clients, more past clients every year. Okay. Number 3, future pacing, just setting the expectation, letting them know here's what happens next. If X were to happen, here's what we can expect to happen next. And here are the options that could possibly be available to us, right? Future pacing them. Because what happens is when you future pace, the better you are at this, the less surprises that happen, the more equity you build in the relationship. Because if something were to happen in a transaction and you already set the expectation that this could happen, and here will be the solution or the solutions for it, when it actually happens, you have less of an emotional client, which means now you're helping them think more logically, which then means they're getting an overall better experience, right? Okay. And then asking for feedback. Client, how am I doing in providing the best service to you? What can I do to be a better agent for you? Not asking for feedback on the transaction, but asking the client, how can myself, the agent, or you, the agent, be better for that individual? And be prepared for them to tell you, I think you're doing great. And I'm here to tell you, do not let them get away with that. When you get that question, I want you to ask them, I appreciate you giving me that. I'm happy to hear that I'm doing well for you. Thank you for that. But if there was one thing that I could just do better, just one thing, what would that be? What would that be? And that gives them more time to think, right? You're putting them on a spot. A lot of times they're not able to go back and think, oh, yeah, I remember that one time where you didn't call me for 3 days and that would have been nice for you to, they don't think about that when you put them on the spot. Give them more time to think by asking them the same question differently. Okay, cool. So every conversation needs to have intention. Those 4 things need to be your main focus in your conversations. Every conversation, period. Okay. All right. We're going to pivot. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. Okay. So we're going to move on. There is something that there's a book I read. I don't know, man. It's probably been about 7 or 8 years ago. Okay. And it is called oh goodness gracious, what is it called? The 10 Golden Rules of Customer Service, I think is what it's called. Okay. And it's a great book because what it does is it breaks down the rules that you need to make sure you follow if you want to provide exceptional service. Okay. Right. Like I just gave you a breakdown on in every conversation what your focus should be. Well, here are 10 golden rules of great customer service. And by the way, if you're looking for the book it's like the golden egg or the $6,000 egg or something like that. Again, it's a great book. And these 10 golden rules is where I got where I got these rules from that book. Okay. So number 1, provide quick responses and solid answers. Number 2, listen well. Okay. We got to make sure that we are very great at listening. Okay. People want to be heard. Number 3, be flexible and adaptable. We got to learn to empathize with people. We got to learn to understand that this is a person. Okay. And we have to have tactical empathy. All right. Number 4, we got to learn to apologize well. Apologize well. That's also taking personal responsibility which clients typically appreciate. Okay. Number 5, appreciate the client and show respect to them. Okay. Number 6, remember the client. Treat them like they're your favorite family member. Make them feel special. Okay. Next, say yes whenever possible. You want to always stay in agreement. Next, ask for feedback and accept criticism, which we kind of touched on already. Ask for feedback and accept criticism. Next, revise tactics based on the feedback. Okay. So if they give you the feedback, one of the best ways to improve is to apply the feedback that they gave you. Now, yeah, sometimes they're going to give you feedback that isn't really legit, fine. But I'm sure any feedback is good feedback, number one. Number two, I'm sure there are some good nuggets in the feedback that they gave you that if you took personal responsibility, you'd be able to be like, you know what, I could improve in this one little area. Okay. And then lastly, value and empower your team when speaking to clients. So if you're working with a team or if you have support, then you want to make sure you value and empower the team when speaking to clients. Okay. Okay, cool. So the last thing I'm going to leave with you guys is if you want to have a way to really understand what the differences between an exceptional experience, a neutral experience, and a negative experience. Okay, like if you, I was able to operationalize this process, right? This like what creates an exceptional experience versus a neutral versus a negative. Okay, so I broke this down. So for the client to have an exceptional experience, we want the transaction conditions to be better than transaction expectations. Okay. So, in other words, you want to discuss with the client the reality of the market, the possible turbulence that we could have that can occur during a transaction. And by the way, when you do this is before the actual turbulence were to happen, right? Hence why future pacing is so important. Okay. You got to do this before the problems arise, before the fires happen. You need to make sure transaction conditions are better than transaction expectations. Okay. Some people may call it under promise, over deliver. Fine. For the client to have a neutral experience, the transaction expectations will match transaction conditions. So, in other words, they are experiencing what they expected. Now, I want you to understand that even though it's a neutral experience, it doesn't mean it's a negative. Like it's still a net positive because their experience with our team culture or with your team culture or with you as an individual will increase rapport and will drive certainty and security within them. Okay. So it's still a net positive if they were to get a neutral experience. Okay. And then if the client were to have a negative experience, that just means the transaction expectations are better than the transaction conditions. So typically, a client is going to have a negative experience when we, as the pro, as the advisor, as the real estate agent, we don't honestly communicate the reality of the market and the possible problems that could occur during a transaction. One thing to keep in mind, we cannot control everything. And we need to make that very clear with ourselves first before we can obviously have conviction when doing this stuff. We can only control what we can control, right? And that's the only thing I'm gonna like. Whenever it comes down to working with a client, you got to make sure that you give them the reality of the market and what could go wrong. It is no different than a doctor giving you the truth about your health, whether it's your eye doctor or your general health, doesn't matter. if a doctor were to shy away from giving you the bad news or giving you the reality of your health, we wouldn't have any trustworthy doctors. Like we wouldn't have hardly any doctors, I think, because everyone would be getting sued. Doctors would not be a reliable resource to help improve someone's health, right? But doctors are one of the people who they remove their emotions and they're logically focused on providing the reality, right? Because if they don't, then it could cause somebody to actually perish. And we're not in, the doctors don't want that to happen. Anybody in the health field, I'm sure, does not want that to happen. So I believe that due to the lack of conviction, due to the lack of confidence, and or just the avoidance of confrontation, we can overpromise and paint a picture that there will be no turbulence that will or can happen. We're not future pacing, and then when it does happen, the client feels discontent. So do not do that. But that is a way for you to truly understand what creates a exceptional experience, a neutral, and a negative experience. Okay, so apply this. This one thing, this pretty much this podcast episode has enabled my team to increase our repeat and referral business by, I don't know, 25 to 30%. And right now, we are sitting between 30 to 40% repeat referral business every year, which is helping us do more business, help more families every single year. So take this serious, re-listen to it and apply it right away. Okay. Apply it right away. So yeah, this one is a little shorter than normal and jam-packed with information. Go ahead and apply the stuff. We will be, what's real cool is all the things that I'm sharing with you guys are things that actually we do within our organization. And also in the future, we're going to be having people outside of the real estate, like, agent and team space to share what works in their industries that we could also use in our industry. So you guys stay tuned for future podcast episodes where we are able to definitely have fun and break that stuff down too. So I hope this was valuable. If you're watching this on any of the YouTube or iTunes, wherever it may be, please leave us a review, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know how we're doing. Okay, we're going to keep bringing the content. So until next time, y'all stay safe. Put the work in. Peace.